So this video is going to be all about the basics of place value. We're going to start by looking at this large number. I want you to think about how you would say this number out loud. Go ahead, practice reading it. Awesome. We'll come back to that in just a moment. In the meantime, let's go ahead and learn what each of these place values is called. We will start with the place furthest to the right, this 4. This is in the ones place. Moving to the left, where the 3 is, this represents tens. So we have 3 tens in this number. Continuing on, the 9 is in the hundreds place. Just a side note, you will notice that there are no THs on any of these. A lot of times people get so used to saying hundredths and tenths when we work with decimals that a lot of times when we work with these larger numbers, they just continue adding the THs on. Please do not do that. That represents a piece that is smaller than 1. And for this particular unit, we are dealing with all numbers larger than 1. We will get to decimals later in this semester. Moving further to the left, we now work our way into the thousands. We actually repeat this pattern of ones, then tens, then hundreds, but now we're referring to how many groups of thousands we have. Therefore, this first one is actually considered the thousands place, or you can think of it as the 1,000s place. Bet you can guess what the next one's going to be. Hopefully you came up with the 10,000s place. Similarly, this 0 here, yes, it is 0, but it still is a placeholder, or the 100,000s place. This 1, 10, 100 pattern will continue for every single group of 3 digits. That's why in the United States, we actually put commas as like separators to represent the breaks between each of the sets. So here's our ones set. This is our thousands set. This is actually our millions set. So this 1 is in the 1 millions place. You may have noticed I said in the United States we use commas to denote the differences between every group of 3. In other countries, they use commas actually where we would use decimal points. So be careful if you are someone who wants to go teach abroad, that you aren't just throwing commas into your numbers as they get to be very large. They kind of do like a space maybe between the 2, like each, like they'll do 1, 2, 3, and then a little space, 1, 2, 3, a little space. But they don't do commas because their comma would represent that you're actually breaking apart a whole into pieces, exactly how we would view a decimal point. So be careful if you are teaching abroad. Let's now look at the 4 different ways that we typically represent these large numbers. These 4 ways are expanded form, standard form, word form, and using a base 10 model. We'll start in the top right corner with standard form. This is actually exactly as we have written it up above. This is the way you would typically see a number written out. So this here would be our standard form. Let's go ahead and put it into expanded form. Expanded form takes into account the place value that you are working with. For example, this one is in the millions place, so the very first number that we're working with in expanded form would be 1 million. Then we add the next place. We have 0 100,000s. If we don't have any 100,000s, we don't need to add any. But next we will need to add 8 10,000s. This is the same as 80,000. Moving on, we need to add 6,000. And after 6,000, we still need to add 900, 30, and then 4. Let's go ahead and add those. So this is what it would look like for our final expanded form. 1 million plus 8 10,000s or 80,000 plus 6 1,000s, that's the same as 6,000, plus 900s plus 3 tens, which is 30, plus 4. That's expanded form. Now, you may recall when I asked you to think about how you would read this number aloud on the previous slide. Think back to what you said. The most common way that students read this is 1,086,934. Again, they read 1,086,934. That may seem perfectly normal to you because that's what most people do. However, the correct way to read this would actually be 1,086,934. If you need to, rewind the video and see if you can notice the difference between the two ways that I just read this number. Here, I wrote out the correct way to say it. Hopefully you notice the difference. 1,086,934. You do not read 934. You don't put an and anywhere in here. In fact, you should never use the word and unless you have a decimal point. We are not working with decimals again yet in this class, so you should not be using the word and when you write this out in word form or when you're reading these numbers. Our last way to show a number is the base 10 model. Those of you who have worked with elementary school students, whether it be volunteering in a classroom, doing your classroom observations, maybe you even recall back from when you were in elementary school, we use these base 10 blocks to help us represent numbers. Now, I know these are really, really large numbers, so we're going to stick to just dealing with the values in the hundreds, tens, and ones place. So I'm going to go ahead and use this base 10 model to model just the numbers here in the blue, the 934. In the base 10 model, we basically have blocks to represent each of the 3 place values for those last 3 digits. So we're going to start with the 9. We need to have 9 hundreds blocks. The 900s blocks look like squares. They're usually 10 by 10. A lot of times they even have like the little etches on there to represent, like you can see the 100 squares in there. It's a 10 by 10. A lot of times, we'll learn this more at decimals, but a lot of times these are color coded for your classroom. So I would recommend a lot of times using the same colors when you're representing these with your students as the manipulatives in your classroom. Obviously, we're doing this online, so I do not have the manipulatives for you. So I'm just going to go ahead and use a light blue so you can see it against the dark blue background. But yeah, we would basically be starting off with 900s blocks to represent the 900s. Moving on, we then are going to need 3 tens blocks since 3 is in the tens place. The tens blocks are often called sticks because they're just one long stick. It's a row of basically a 1 by 10. So basically if you were to put 10 of these next to each other, it would actually form a 100 block. Again, recommend using the colors that are in the blocks at your school. The last thing we're going to need is 4 ones. Imagine taking a 10 block and cutting it into 10 equal pieces. They're just really little cubes. So here you can see my 4 ones cubes. Here's our base 10 model. Again, you can see the 900s, the 3 tens, and then the 4 ones for a total of 934. And that is the 4 ways to show a number.